welcome to the very first edition of Interlinked, the badass pod every week from citizens, for citizens, and of course, Meatbags will let you guys in on it. Today, we have a very special episode. It's our first. It's going to be amazing. Here's what you can expect. One, we're going to introduce our hosts here. Second, we're going to catch you guys up on what is going on in the world of crypto gaming. We're going to talk about the purpose of the pod, what's been going on thus far, and then we're going to break it all down for you. And then the final thing, we're going to have a good ass time. So without any further ado, welcome to the pod. And I want to hand it off to Nick. Would love to hear a little bit about your background. Who are you, man? And how did you get onto this pod?
Thanks, Ben. Pleasure to be on here. And I won't say a childhood dream, since podcasts weren't really invented when we were children, but certainly an adulthood dream to be on, a podcast. So super excited to be here. A little bit of background on me. Education-wise, mostly focused on business. Worked in the tech space for a bit on the sales side. Then went back to grad school during COVID to focus more on entrepreneurship. So have always had sort of a mind towards that. And 2021 is when I first started getting into crypto. First time I ever bought Bitcoin was actually I was super into growing plants, very big into the cannabis scene for a while, and wanted to purchase some cactus from Spain, and all they would take was Bitcoin. And so that was the first time I had ever, purchased anything with cryptocurrency. Started dollar cost averaging from there, then fell sort of ass backwards into Axie Infinity, where read a news article on the little stock app on Apple about this game where people were breeding and printing money, and I'd been a lifelong gamer, and I was like, okay, this is something worth checking out. And before I knew it, I had set up my MetaMask, and then I was figuring out how to go from the Ethereum blockchain to the Ronin blockchain, all within sort of my first week of crypto, and then was started doing some Axie breeding, and that really opened the door to crypto gaming, and was just obsessed ever since. Then fell into Neo Tokyo. Mostly what I'm doing now is investing full time, not specifically just in Web3. I always say, I don't allocate most of my capital into crypto. Sort of a scar from the the last bull market when I thought things could only go up. So now I play things a little bit more conservatively. So allocation wise, I'm mostly in other assets, but almost 95% of my focus is in crypto, and that being in crypto gaming. Obviously get to the pleasure of being co-AMA lead with you. So have enjoyed working together in that, and looking forward to doing this with you and Ellio.
Rock on. Appreciate you coming on, of course, and sharing some of your knowledge. Don't always get to meet full-time investors, so really excited to get your perspective here on the pod moving forward. Gentleman that usually does not need any introduction, but want to give him one anyways. Mr. EllioTrades, welcome to the pod. Would love to get a little bit of background on you too.
Yeah, thanks so much. Obviously, we're here because the brainchild between Alex Becker and I, Neo Tokyo, has blossomed into this insanely complex organism in which has brought us together as we're all citizens here in Neo Tokyo. And I'm obviously a content creator in the crypto space, co-founded Neo Tokyo and Superverse, previously called Superfarm. We have a video game called Imposters that's part of that ecosystem as well. Have shipped a ton of different little tools throughout the Web3 ecosystem. And it's just a really exciting space that has inspired me for years. I have about 1.3 million followers across YouTube and Twitter, and have been actively investing in the space since 2017. Have ridden the cycles in various ways, and have the scars and the highlights and the lowlights to reflect on. And the one thing I keep coming back to is crypto gaming is the most logical product category for me. It's the one that's always made sense to me. It's where I've chosen to focus the most of my energy building, because it just where I see the connection, as well as, of course, continuing to build my community and keep the content rolling. I try to make sure I always am making content throughout the week. So that's me, creator and founder of various projects. Thanks for having me.
Rock on. And I will also give y'all a little background on myself too. I'm actually a professional podcast background maker. I like to put books strategically to make people think I'm intelligent, and it's been working pretty well so far. I mean, here we are. But no, in all seriousness, I've been a gamer since I was about 6 years old. I've been investing since I was about 16. Convinced my dad to open me up a Fidelity account. I was definitely not old enough for that, but here we are. About 20 years old, started building businesses. Accidentally built a social media marketing agency. Went to LSU. I was going to be a doctor. Had an internship. Saw some blood. Decided that was not the route for me, and switched to finance, because my theory was, if I'm still seeing blood there, I'm definitely doing something wrong. And so far it's been pretty good. And so from there, I actually, again, a lot of it was an accident, but got the LSU Department of Finance as my first paying client, and just kind of started scaling from there. Started writing books. First one right here, CEO at 20, A Little Book for Big Dreams. Started doing podcasting. The real mic is back there. This actually was a mic from high school, where I was also in a band. Y'all will never guess what the genre is. This will be a little quiz for the audience later on down the road, see if you guys can figure that out. Anyways, had a podcast, done about 600 episodes, interviewed billionaires, New York Times bestselling authors, Emmy Award winners, blah, blah, blah. Had a startup end of 2019, took that to about 120 people. And then COVID hit, did a lot of family stuff. Went into the working with other people mode. Was a VP of partnerships for an Inc. 5000 called Dropified. We were doing e-commerce and some cool stuff there. Then I went into mergers and acquisitions from about 2022 to early 2023. Now full-time Web3, and the only VP of partnerships for Nexus, which is a citizen-built startup, and we're totally changing the game when it comes to Web3 gaming software. So anyways, really excited to be here with you guys. Really appreciate the bios and everything. So now I want to transition into talking a little bit about the pod, and really why we thought that this was a good idea. Nick, I want to hand it off to you. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your vision for the pod, what you really see here as being an opportunity for all of us as citizens to come together and do this awesome pod.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I really think there's a niche that hasn't been explored in our space, which is quite popular in the regular podcasting space, which is just having a few people having a conversation, as opposed to constantly banging out different topics or hitting you with a lot of pitches and such. So really looking forward for the opportunity for a few people super passionate about crypto gaming to just be able to talk about our space, talk about the games, talk about the pieces of the technology that we're excited about changing the gaming space. So really excited, for the potential of this podcast, and think it's really filling a need that, our space can all sort of gather around once a week and update and have some fun.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. I was kind of telling you guys before, when we were kind of brainstorming this, I think if you look at major religions of the world or major movements, there's always these underlying core values that bring the people together. And it's something that we all have to share something in common. Obviously for us, we believe in the future of crypto gaming. We believe in awesome projects that have black and white colors and, have absolutely badass art and, just top notch everything. But a very shameless plug for Neo Tokyo, but on the real, the values there that we share, in addition to the recurring traditions. So we had our 1 year anniversary. As of the filming of this, we're doing our 2-year anniversary voting for the most awesome citizens. Make sure to go vote. Do your job, everybody. And then there's the monthly. We have the town halls. And so we needed really something weekly that could bring the people together. And I think that was one of the big parts there. And also, we need to have a voice as Neo Tokyo, as the Illuminati of crypto gaming in the metaverse, of what's going on in this space that is not just driven by the founders, as amazing as our founders are, but that it also includes the community. And so that, I think, is one of the most important parts of this pod, which I think can continue on for years to come to be a big platform here for the whole space. What do you think, Elliot?
Yeah, obviously, when you guys approached me with this idea, we had a conversation about it. And, I do a lot of types of content, but one of the types of content I almost never do is podcast content. And it's something that I actually really want to do, because a more casual, more conversational approach to everything going on is something that, I yearn for, and I think would be a nice outlet. But also, one of the biggest things that I think this can accomplish with this particular setup is Neo Tokyo, and other communities, is really set up to be driven by many parts, not just a single, top down sort of funnel like most projects are. And that to me feels very native and the opportunity there is really high. It's hard, right? It's hard to coordinate a lot of moving pieces, but we have a very complex and cool structure to the org. And I've seen a lot of success from individuals that come in and take advantage of what's going on in NeoTokyo. And I like the idea of being sort of in line and next to other citizens creating this content, and not necessarily like having a, top down sort of type of branded or content based on my channel or just Alex's channel. So I think it's cool. And I think it fulfills the sort of general mission of NeoTokyo, which is really to create a lot of different, like, I guess, drivers of contribution to what's going on. And this would be great because we could have a bunch of different people. I'm one of them. And of course, the founders are contributing, but it's a matter of, this is going to be more interesting if everybody digs in and is shoveling. Sort of many hands make light work.
Totally. I think what's really interesting too about NeoTokyo, to slightly diverge from the topics for a second, is this idea of like, you guys are absolute heavyweights in the crypto gaming space, yet we're building this as a whole community, and you guys are, at the end of the day, you're just citizens too, so like that part is very interesting to me, is like, we all have responsibilities as citizens of like, what can the Citadel do for us, but what can we do for the Citadel sort of mentality, I think is what's going to really push it. So it's been a very interesting experiment to see, and I feel like this sort of model will be replicated in many different ways, but we were kind of one of the first ones, if not the first ones, to do it in this sort of way. So it's going to be very interesting to see, like, because you guys are both like founders, but then all of us also have our own stuff going on too. And then we all come together, and like, at least in my mind, the beauty of it is every day we get to compound our learnings, we get to compound our earning, we get to compound working together. And then that over time builds into this really powerful machine. And what a cool concept. What a cool snowball that's going to be rolling down the hill over time. That to me is freaking fascinating.
Yeah, it was born out of the concept was one that I brought to Alex when the whole gaming explosion happened in the second half of 2021. And it was looking at essentially how NFT projects had grown. And especially, I was pretty early to the ape thing. I wasn't a mentor or anything, but I got in within that first, month or so. And I saw a community that was just so ecstatic and so passionate that they kind of crowned, and the Yuga team did a lot of things right, but the community was, in my opinion, the reason why Bored Apes became Bored Apes. And we saw a lot of different iterations of communities and NFTs. And what was very interesting for me to observe was that the strongest community, I felt, was dictated by who was holding it, not by what the art was or the sort of various other characteristics. And so the concept was, how do we attract the strongest community? And the first, obviously, qualifying characteristic was that it had to be a meritocracy. It had to be earned. It had to be difficult to get into. And then, as I was describing it, Alex kind of took it and ran and turned it into this like nouveau Ready Player One, like hellish treasure hunt thing. And it was really cool to see the creativity he brought to the style of rollout. But I think it really struck a chord with people, like the concept, right? And the experience, the shared experience. And so I think, in so many ways, NeoTokyo was very original in what it did. And that's why many tried to, we kind of created this whitelist mania meta that everybody talked about throughout the rest of NFT sort of history. That's kind of our fault, because that's really the free whitelist meta thing was just, I think, our contribution. And yeah, to this date, we have I think the most incredible community that's just really driven and into the idea. And it's something I'm very proud of, and I'm very excited to see where it goes. So I think the concept really was what got us here. It was a good concept. It was great. It was well executed, and the creativity, the feel of the community. But what's going to get NeoTokyo to that next phase is we have founders launching projects. We have people hiring from within NeoTokyo. We have all these committees and sub sort of DAOs. We have the incentivized build and Bytes 2. We have these tiers of membership for different types of users. We have Citizen Capital, which is a citizen-run sort of investment launchpad arm that's totally run by citizens within the community. Alex and I didn't set that up. Don't touch it, but it becomes a really natural way because all these communities want the holders of NeoTokyo to be holders of their projects. And so there's all these things that have sort of naturally, organically grown in different corners of the community. And I'm just so excited to see what that, and this is all during the bear market. This is all as things are going like this, right? Like NeoTokyo kind of started right at the peak of 2021 and everything's been kind of down only since. So we haven't gotten to see like the organism and its complexity as things get a little easier and as there's more value in your time spent. And so to me, it's like, if that's the level of engagement we have now, it'll be really exciting to see the level of community engagement we have as there's more reason to engage, AKA people are doing better in the markets. There's more reasons to tune in. There's more activity and more good news effectively. So there's a lot to look forward to, but I'll just say, I've been more than pleasantly surprised by the path so far, and I'm really excited for what comes next.
Yeah, and I think organically is the perfect word to describe it, because that's really how it's felt. It's not all of us sort of circled around a central figure. It's creating a fertile ground for a bunch of us to be able to grow. And, not only is like a more decentralized organization just so close to the ethos of crypto, I think it's really one of the only paths forward from a sustainability standpoint, where we've all seen projects where it's sort of this demigod worshiping kind of thing. And it's great when they're like fully pulling into it. But if they decide, whether something happens to them or they decide to pursue a different opportunity, then it all withers. When you have this decentralized group of people all working towards a common goal, it's much more like, chain link armor. It all just makes itself stronger. And, if you lose a couple pieces, the armor is still intact.
Yeah, it's like the chain vest that Frodo wore throughout the trilogy. It's just very lightweight, very tough. Yes. Just, try not to dig too deep into the mountain. We do not want to unleash the Balrog. That'll be bad news bears. But yeah, like, you don't want to have to just always rely on like a few core people, because what if they get abducted by aliens? A little nod to the to the alien trope for you, Elliot, and imposters, of course, there. But like, you really don't know what's going to happen, and that's just like that's a risk for the actual project itself. Like, you can't just rely on one person. I mean, it's just silly. But
I think it's certainly something where the vision is being set out there, but then the substance is being populated. And everybody says, like, you have like the built by ape thing, and there's a lot of apes that do brands and stuff with their apes, and I think it's really cool. But you'll see that that's a characteristic of the best crypto communities. Like, let's just take Ethereum, Bitcoin, whatever. You have people mining, you have people constantly advancing what Bitcoin is, what Ethereum is, and then Ethereum's given its value by everyone building on top of that idea. Without the people building on top of Ethereum, there's no value there. And so you have the same sort of concept here of, you can have, maybe Gary Vee is going to create the next Disney in VeeFriends. But, what's really clear to me is that if everyone in the community is actively, building on top of what that network is, that to me seems like the apex predator for a decentralized community, and that the dividends long-term can really be there. And then, it's also interesting. There's other things we can talk about, but I mean, to me, it just feels like the opportunity is bigger. And, we've seen this with other communities where if it's overly founder driven, and obviously, the other projects I founded, like Superverse and Imposters, are more founder driven than maybe NeoTokyo is. And yeah, I mean, look, like they both have their place, but we see that as projects mature, you want to see a multitude of forces pushing the project forward. And obviously, Alex and I are in the back using our positions to help organize opportunities and bring in opportunities. Like, for example, there's a ton of projects that want to have NeoTokyo holders as investors. So introducing projects that come to us, to Citizen Capital and stuff like that, those are the ways that we can obviously provide that connector that is catalyzed by who we are in the founder sort of role, as well as vision, cohesion, building stuff like Bytes 2, which are super complex pieces of smart contract technology, but then also the spirit, right? Which is really what the market is about. When you talk about like value, that's like what exists, but like price is based on sort of perception and that energy. And that's really created, I think, mostly by people outside the founders. And so that's where I think you get something special, is if everyone is coming in with the expectation that we're going to create this storyline together. And I think it becomes really powerful, especially as that starts to play out in a hypothetical world of a bull market, and that starts to play out, and the flywheel's there. I think it becomes really exciting, and it puts the citizens in a unique position because they're actually driving the project with us, and that makes us stronger.
Yeah, I think if we kind of scope out for a second and we look at like what is actually going on in the world right now, everybody, like I'm 29, right? Everybody my age and younger, and maybe even a little bit older, but my age and younger, like I barely remember the internet, right? You know what I'm talking about? Most people don't. Like my younger
There's a name for that, by the way.
Yeah, whatever it's called, whatever you 30 pluses call that the dinosaur tech. But however old you are, you've seen different pieces of technology. But people younger than me, they grew up in virtual worlds. They have spent all of their time in virtual worlds. Barring a freaking nuclear fallout, which, that's life on hard mode. Hopefully we don't have to do that. If we do, all bets are off. But that being said, if things continue on as they do, then these people are going to grow up, and everybody underneath them in the hierarchy of humanity is going to grow up in virtual worlds, and that's only going to increase. Technology is a one-way street. We've seen that. We did not go back to the horse and buggy. That's not what's happening. That's never going to happen. Technology is going to keep going forward. So as these people get older, as we get older, we're going to increase our buying power. We're going to increase the amount of wealth that we hold as a percentage of the total. And we're used to interacting and transacting and socializing and working and playing and doing all the things that we do in these virtual worlds. That is not going to go away. That is only going to increase. So then when you have that fact in the world, and then you pair that with the fact that on average, if you look at, the high performing teams in the world, a smaller group of extremely motivated people is much more lethal than a larger group of not as motivated people. Like look at the Spartans. You want to have the Spartan group. You don't want to have the, just a bunch of meat shields and peasants like waving their forks around being angry at shit. Like you want to have the Spartans with their freaking spears and shields and like, what is your profession? Like those kind of people that are hardcore. And so the fact that we have that in Neo Tokyo, and there's a few thousand of us, and we're going hard at it every day, that compounding effect to me, those two things, the intersection of that, mixed with the intersection of the maturity of crypto, mixed with the intersection of the maturity of gaming, all of those things together, that is a very tasty treat that we're looking at, and that's coming up. And it's not going to be immediate, but my God, is it going to be fun.
Well, just the trend that you mentioned there was something that, I've been reflecting on over the last couple of years because it caught me flat-footed. When I was growing up, I somehow had this idea in my head, maybe it was from the parents, maybe it was from, just older adults, that we were going to grow out of all these loves we had when we were little, that we would, no longer play video games. We wouldn't be watching, anime or other, doing all the stuff that we loved when we were young. I didn't realize, and it really just dawned on me once, I looked around being like, okay, now we've got another Star Wars trilogy. We've got a bunch of these superhero movies. Okay, they made Dragon Ball Super. Okay, video games are blowing up. That we would become this bigger and bigger bloated, sort of voting block, voting with our dollars. But you can really see it now. I mean, all the stuff that we loved growing up are now starting to grip mainstream culture. So I do always love, I'm the oldest of, there's 4 of us siblings in total. and just trying to stay in touch with the younger generations, the younger cousins. What do these guys love? Like, because that's what's going to be driving the narrative coming back on the back of the wave that we're on right now.
It always does. It always does. Like, I can't tell you. Okay, I have a funny story here. Years ago, I was at one of my family's like a cousin wedding, and at that time, I was in college, and I was dancing and hanging out with some of my older cousins. We all had our drinks, whatever we were doing, and they came up to me and they're like, "Dude," they're like, they're in their 30s and 40s. I'm like, 21 or whatever. And they're like, "Dude, how are the parties in college?" I'm like, you guys were there. You know what it's like. It's awesome. And they're like, "Dude, can you sneak us into a party?" And I'm like, you think people aren't going to notice? They're like, no, we'll blend in. No, it'll be totally fine. And so, like, I feel like a lot of people are still in that mode of, hey, we want to live the glory days of being younger. We want to get back to what makes us feel like children again. We want to get back to that idea. And the fact that now the people who are younger are creating the culture that reverberates through society, that tiny microcosm is going to be repeated on a massive scale. And I think we're seeing that. Like, how many older people do you know play games? Like, a lot of people play games on their phone. A lot of people. And they're like, you should go outside and play games. It's like, you should go outside too. You're doing the same shit as me. You know what I mean? Like, we're all doing the same thing, and it's coming from the younger generation. That to me is like, I'm totally agreeing with you. 100%. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, talking about like what is old is new again. I mean, for me, I have cycled through a lot of different games, and I found myself really actually enjoying lately Nintendo games a lot, which were of course the OGs that I played as a kid and back in the internet days. And yeah, that to me has been really joyous. These, and what's funny is like a lot of the new Nintendo games are just the old ones, but with better graphics, and they really didn't change like what the games are. Like Super Smash is fundamentally the same game with like more characters and a few more moves, right? You have Mario. They just released the OG like platformer Mario, and it's got better graphics, but it's pretty similar. It's pretty similar, like there's a few more extra game mechanics. And so, and it just works, right? And so, we've definitely seen the evolution of ourselves as mainstream consumers. And, you see like Goku here, and you see like some Demon Slayer stuff here. And when I look around at stores, I see that the audience of people buying, like, say, like more expensive figurines for anime shows and stuff are adults, right? It's not a kid thing anymore. And that's because we grew up with this stuff. So we still think it's cool. And now we just have money. So we're going to buy all that stuff that we couldn't buy when we were kids. And so, yeah, it's just one of those things that all the things that we were told about, like, oh, when you grow up, you'll be interested in this. It's like, I don't really think that's true. I think just we grew up with different stuff, and so we want different stuff now. But you see the stuff that we grew up with, like especially Dragon Ball Z, you can see just how big of an influence and commercial products it's become globally. And so, yeah, I mean, whatever the kids are into now is going to remain cool. Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z could have easily been a TBT that's not popular anymore. And I'd argue they're probably more popular than ever. And so it's an interesting thing to watch. But the main thing is, what the kids do and where they place their value and importance is what you should be looking to scale. We saw this with, Snapchat and Facebook originally, which, Instagram, all those sort of social networks started, specifically TikTok started as Musical.ly with like little kids, like 9 to 14-year-olds. And it scaled dramatically. And so if you want to know what's hot next, look at like middle school kids. And that's usually what you'll get your answer. And what are they doing? They're doing Fortnite, they're doing Roblox, they're doing gaming. And that culture is certainly not getting, to me, smaller. It's getting more important. And then when you think about where it is, what crypto and the sort of stage it's at, you have like the perfect sort of cocktail here for this amazing technology that's kind of looking for the right problems to solve with ownership and decentralization, and just generally, bringing more individuality and meaning to like this online world, like possessions online. And you have the world of gaming, which is where people are putting all their time and energy and emotional sort of efforts, and they place all this importance on this digital world where they own nothing, and they don't have any sort of rights or whatever. And you sort of see that these two worlds, when they combine, will obviously sort of multiply each other. And so it's just an interesting time we're at. If you take that approach of like looking at a 15-year-old and what they do, and then looking at another 15-year-old, aka the blockchain, pretty much, and you say, okay, what are these 15-year-olds going to do together? I mean, maybe they'll get together and they'll have a gamer party, and I think that that's what's going to happen.
Well, I think also too, if we think back to like who was glorified in the later 90s, I think what we see a lot of are athletes and celebrities and people that had a lot of clout. They had some sort of they had some sort of achievement or some sort of superior skill in something, or they could attract attention, or they could create music or whatever it was. But as that then matured, that, I would say, entertainment asset class, if you will, like thinking of, instead of money, but like in the form of awareness currency, what that then evolved into was esports and having people compete against each other. And I think it is beyond reproach to say that esports has become significantly bigger from like a worldwide consumption perspective. It's become bigger than sports in a lot of ways. And the amount of distribution it has is unreal. The amount of people that tune into it, the amount of people that check it out and watch it and see it. The World Series of League of Legends, for example, we're talking a gigantic amount of people. And one of the things that I think is a very strong thing to keep in mind is that when it comes to video games, we're no longer limited by our physical prowess, and we don't have to be 8'9" to be able to compete, or we don't have to be, faster than a freaking bullet to be able to compete and to really compete at a high level. And like, it's very intellectual. And like, if you sit there at your computer and grind out, like you can get good at something and compete in a real way. And we all love competition in some way, shape, or form. Well, I should say most of us like competition. The others of us are just scared to admit it. And then, that really levels the playing field so more people can get interested, so more people want to tune in. And it's a very obvious trend that we're now seeing. So it's like, it feels like all of these different worlds are coming together in such a cool way that I'm excited to see what happens next. I'm excited to see what comes next. I mean, how lucky are we to be alive in this moment to see what is about to happen in the future of industry and the world? What a freaking gift.
And you're just starting to see sort of the green shoots start to come out of the snow. I remember when I just like started researching, I was doing research for the Neo Tokyo research team, and one person could research all of the playable games in a week, and you could get a pretty good feel for the entire industry. Now it's already grown well beyond that. And, I use my little brother because he's a straight Web 2 gamer, Call of Duty maxi all the way through as like a gauge. And the first game I've gotten him to play that's a crypto game is Dead Drop. And it's not just Dead Drop. You're seeing, Shrapnel hasn't really hit people's hands yet. So I'm, little asterisks. We'll see what ends up getting delivered. But, Dead Drop is one that it really drives home for me. And I do, I don't have a huge bag, but I do own some of the NFTs. But,
Me too.
I always like to be transparent with that. But just to have a game that's playable, and especially on their most recent snapshot, we were playing that, to have a game that's not only like, okay, I'm going to be the Web3 extraction shooter. We've seen so much of that in crypto gaming. I'm going to be the, blank genre crypto game. But to watch Dead Drop actually bring a new feature to a pretty tired medium where it's like, okay, let's do skill-based drops. Like everybody gets dropped off in the bus that essentially Fortnite did, or spawned into the map, all this old technology. This is actually something new, which might grip the audience into playing of like, okay, we're going to have this race, and depending on where you go and which way you turn, that actually dictates where you fall on the map. So that was like, something that definitely had me pretty excited.
Oh, dude. Plus, they have a brilliant, and again, I am totally a bag holder. We got in as Neo Tokyo, so want to be totally transparent there. But like the fact that not only is there the game, but there's also the opportunity to then be able to craft within there and to be able to create using the tools, that is freaking cool. And then all of that mixed with the fact that you have one of the most influential streamers in gaming history, who it's his project, like all of these things come together. Whoa, what a cool mixture. Again, like what is that going to turn into? And then maybe even more importantly than what that's going to turn into, who is that going to inspire to go and build something that they're like, oh, that was cool, but I got an idea for this. And then it just opens the floodgates because everybody's going to want to be like them. And they created this badass game in this ecosystem. And there's going to be creators within there. That's going to fuel creativity and innovation and uplift people who maybe they weren't thinking about being entrepreneurs, but they just started building these little mini games or something within this game. And that just like unlocks something in them that they didn't know was there. There's so many ways that can compound and spiral in the best way out of control. Like how cool, how freaking fun. I'm glad you brought that one up. So, okay, guys, I think we did a great job of covering the purpose of this, and we got way off of the docket for today, but I love it. And I think we actually touched on it a bit, but what I would suggest we do next is I want to talk about a little bit more, because we did talk about it a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit more about how we got to this point. Like, how did we go from a point where, Bitcoin is in 2009, right? 2008, 2009, roughly around there. How did we go from that to where blockchain, crypto, gaming, all of this stuff has evolved to the part where we're talking about it? We're talking about a video game built on blockchain rails on an L2 with smart contracts and NFTs and in-game ownership, and talking about disrupting the entirety of gaming in a multi-$100 billion industry. Like, that's a big shift in a short amount of time on a grand macro scale. So maybe we can kind of break that down a little bit. I have some highlights here that I want to highlight, but guys, feel free to jump in and interrupt me whenever you guys want to have a thought on this timeline, right? So we have Bitcoin 2009. We have ETH 2014. We have NFTs, the very first one. I was doing some research actually in 2014 also, but becomes more mainstream 2017. I would put crypto gaming beginning, maybe blockchain gaming beginning with CryptoKitties roughly around November 2017, roughly there. Play to earn coming in 2018. We have the Axes, we have the sandboxes popping up around there. We have some alt L1 chains popping up. Obviously, we have Ethereum, which you talked about. We've got Solanas, we've got the Nears, we've got the Avalanches, we've got these different chains, these different coins popping up. Axie starts exploding in user count. They start showing that it is possible for a Web3 game to start gaining mass adoption. And around the time where they really pop off, I think that was roughly Q3 of 2021. You have this intersection of events where Facebook rebrands to Meta, which that was awesome. I mean, that did so much for our whole space and brought so much attention to our little corner of the market at that point. Also was a brilliant PR move from them, which we should maybe dig into at a different time. We have our gaming and entire of crypto bull market of 2021, but specifically Axie. They generated an ungodly amount of revenue. If you actually go and look back at it, they generated, I think it was maybe tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue at that time. It was comparable to, like, on a per capita or per gamer basis, it was comparable, if not more or greater than Blizzard's catalog of games at that time. Just chew on that for a second, right? And from there, we then go to traditional gamers like having a problem with NFTs and crypto. There's that big controversy we're like, we don't understand it. We're trying to give gamers more. They're a little bit confused, kind of swayed by the media to think negatively. Then we have loads of L2s popping up, the Polygons, the Arbitrums, the Optimisms, all of these kinds of things. And then October 2021, Valve bans blockchain games. End of 2021, major publishers say they're seriously considering blockchain games like Ubisoft, EA, Take-Two, Square Enix. Then we see this interesting trend from late 2021 to about, this has continued to now, where a lot of talent has moved from Web 2 to Web 3. Some of the smartest people on the planet are just dripping over. We have seen since that time, obviously, a bear market of epic proportions. We've seen the Bitcoin ETF coming up. We're seeing a tremendous amount of gaming development under the hood. All that money that went into the gaming space, that's now being processed through the system. Development is happening. Games are starting to get built. Products are starting to get launched. A lot of controversy, but at this time, it seems like, fast forward to today, and it seems like the two biggest narratives right now in the world of crypto are, one, Bitcoin, that's getting pushed very hard by some of the largest financial institutions in the world, and two, gaming is, in my opinion, the strongest narrative that there is. So that is kind of like a what happened from then until now. One, guys, did I miss anything? And two, what's our thoughts on that? We just covered a lot of years, a lot of ground. Let's recap.
Yeah, I mean, for me, obviously, it was quite a ride for me, because I was here throughout the 2017 run, started building a project in 2018, and then realized as the sort of summer of 2018 progressed, that people really didn't want to use any of this stuff, despite the potential, that it was really just a matter of, riding the Bitcoin run up and down. And so that's when my gears really started turning about, like, okay, maybe some of my assumptions here were wrong, right? Like top 10 apps in the App Store, just disintermediate them, like decentralized Uber. Maybe that's not actually gonna work. Maybe Uber at the center here, like tilting the scales and having a legal team and having like this super fast and cheap experience and sort of being a centralized entity, maybe that's actually better than the decentralized version of it, at least short term, right? Maybe the decentralized version is actually a really long way away. And then I was thinking, in the end, it's got to be something that people use. And when I started seeing the prices and their fluctuations, because I was a noob in 2017, I was new, right? I didn't know about the bear. And so seeing the extreme downside, I realized that this had to be something that you could use and would make your life better without really actually interacting with the speculative value side. And when you start going through, like, analyzing each sort of core vertical there, I mean, gaming is what's left. Gaming it's not the only thing, but it's, in my opinion, the best thing when you talk about like intrinsic value. And so from 2018, later in 2018, I pivoted fully into working on gaming. And everything I would do, I'd make content in the daytime, and I'd work on building games with my team at night. My team was very small, right? And so it was like crazy double days, but I was so passionate about it. And it was just sort of what I've been doing ever since. And then as the 2021 run sort of got kicked off, I have a video in December of 2020 where I'm like, the number one trends that I see for next year are NFTs and gaming. And it's like that kind of like, that video alone really changed the sort of trajectory of my channel, because I show Axie and I show NFTs and I start talking about all of these, I'm talking about CryptoPunks and all these things. And I remember the comments were just like, whatever. But I was like, this is my prediction for 2021. And I think that's probably like my best like forecasting video I've ever made. And it was just like, things that went a bazillion X or whatever. But that's not even really the point. The point is that was actually where the market turned to. And it was the first time that the sort of core beliefs I had about what should be adopted by the market started getting recognized. Now, of course, the reality is that Axie wasn't based on gameplay, but more about wrapping yield in via gameplay. And we should really give the flowers to Axie. I actually said some negative things about Axie on my last gaming deep dive, and I want to walk those back a little. Like, I really respect Axie for being a pioneer and sort of unlocking the potential for the space. Their model was not as sustainable as it could have been, and that's something to evaluate. But I don't want to like be like disrespectful to the Axie community or project. That I don't think that's fair. I think what Axie shows most of all is the potential for a game that was more gameplay driven versus yield driven is immense, and that it could have offset some of the more unnatural parts of that curve. Now, would it have gotten to 40 or $50 billion in value if it wasn't so sort of speculatively yield driven? I think the growth would be slower, but I think it would be more sustainable. And so you'd get trade-offs of higher for longer as opposed to, dramatic and super spiky. And I think that that's a good trade-off long term. So just to recap, that 2021 moment was like big for me because I felt like, my Pinocchio moment, like I'm a real boy here, and everybody was like, oh, Elliott's been talking about this shit and it's finally true. And we can finally see a version of it. Now, I believe that once again, I feel very 2020 or 2019 again, where people are very like, dude, don't bring up that gaming stuff again. Like that's totally obviously didn't work. And it's like a graveyard and all this, burnt people, burnt investors, this and that, but it's still the only thing that makes sense. And, I am very, very passionate about the concept that like the next thing missing is just the one hit game, and that we will see a gameplay driven hit here. I talked to people who I know in the industry, like Robbie, the founder of Immutable. He believes it's going to come in the next 12 months, that there's going to be some form of a hit with like, let's just say 1 million active users within the next 12 months. I certainly hope so. I think 2024 is a good mental model. But I'll just say like within the next 12 to 36 months, I would be shocked if we don't get a hit, just being like, trying to not be like clickbaity and overly excited. I think that would be shocking to me if we don't have a hit here in the next sort of 1 to 3 years. And that would be where I start going, okay, well, I don't really know when it's going to happen. I still think it's going to happen, but I just don't know exactly when. Timing predictions is hard because games are fundamentally a hits driven business. So, that's where we're at right now. That's where we're here. And NeoTokyo was born out of this explosive amount of new people being interested in gaming. And, I was talking with Alex Becker, the other co-founder of NeoTokyo, and we were like, how can we internalize this information? How can we get ahead of this movement and really take advantage of it? How can we be a part of this? And we were like, it's just too much information for me or even my research team or you. Like, there's just too many projects, too many new decks, too many new DMs. Like, it's just impossible for me to have a truly deep and qualitative analysis on everything. And so the question, I was like, well, we should really build a community around this concept of tackling this new industry, and sort of try to get the best people in. And so that's how we ended up with like reverse engineering. Like, that was the idea, is we wanted to build this like machine of people that were helping digest and contribute to, be a part of, invest in, and just harness this opportunity of like, hey, we don't even really understand necessarily all the pieces because it's so big and fast moving. And at that time it was incredibly fast moving. Slower now, a lot easier now. But that was like how we got here, was like this took off so fast that it became almost impossible to catch all the sand, and it was all slipping through the cracks. And so we were like, we need an army, we need a village. And so that was the concept of NeoTokyo, was like, let's build a village here to sort of focus on this new industry and try to, build cool stuff for it, attract builders, attract opportunities to invest, flag the best projects, and essentially have like a group of people who were ideally, as a whole, much smarter than Alex and I could be in approaching this new industry. And I think we succeeded because there's so many smart people in NeoTokyo, and the sum is definitely greater than the sum of its parts, or whatever they say. And so that's the story of how we got here as far as like NeoTokyo. And I think that it's a perfect sort of beginning to chapter 3 or 4. I don't know what chapter we're on 2, but it feels like the next chapter is going to be a lot more grounded and a lot more pragmatic and a lot less sort of idea based. And it's going to be a lot more product and user based. And that is really the full realization here. And so I look forward to seeing sort of like what the next iterations of NeoTokyo will be like, with a ton of real games sort of coming to market that are actually doing what they say, instead of just saying really cool stuff and showing really cool stuff. It's like, oh, look at this, how it's resonating with the world. And the real impact here. And I think it's going to be a really cool time for this community to evolve, and like certain departments within the community, which might have been kind of like not that interesting, like the research arm and the analysis arm, and even like the arms where we help people find jobs and build and stuff, like those will like ignite during the next, if they're, if we're lucky enough to experience this next bull run, which I believe that is a matter of time. That'll be really exciting to see like how that evolves in response to the industry. But yeah, that's the story as I see it. And it's very in media res, because it feels like a great time to be where we're at. I know as a builder, as someone who is building a game and has a game studio, the bear markets are really bliss, because there's just the noise and the insatiable demand for news from the community really dies, and it gives the project a time to really reformulate and plan sustainably for the future. But also, like, realistically, there's so much talent on the market right now, whereas in the bull market, everyone, like junior devs, were asking for like 300K starting salary and like crazy stuff. It's like super hard to scale an organization when you have like this, you're competing effectively with companies on the stock market like Apple and Google who are dicing, they're doling out 500K, 800K salary deals with stock options in the most trusted companies in the world. And then that sets a bar, sets a floor for other industries as well. And then you have projects like, big foundations in crypto, Cardano, Solana, Near, or whatever, and they're exploding in price. And all of a sudden, smart contract engineers are getting soaked up by these big entities, and they're getting paid insanely because they have the token options that have mooned. And the whole thing is extremely hard to like sensibly run an org with that much competition and that much external pressure. Whereas now it's like external pressure and noise is low. It's like a sense of being able to sort of calmly plot your path, as well as hire people at reasonable salaries and control expenses, and really just make sane, logical decisions that are not so completely determined by like the mania of the moment. And so it's really true that bear markets are for builders, and that the opportunity to like push things forward dramatically faster in this market is real. And it's it's certainly something where I've really enjoyed the building process more and more and more throughout the bear, even though it's hard on emotionally to see the industry like this. I can already sense like it's going to get crazy again in the when it does, even these small token spikes, like the amount of reach out I have, the amount of times I'm refreshing my phone, the amount of like just emotional, spiritual energy going into the day is just elevated to another degree. And it's not always helpful for execution. And so, yeah, it's going to be an exciting time, but like the leaps and bounds that have happened during the bad times is I think very significant. And that's like a story that I think people don't necessarily always realize, is that, yeah, you might see the price on a token might be down, but their actual fundamental growth as an org might be way better than it was in the bull. And that's been my experience anecdotally from builders is that they've had the same experience.
Nick, I want to tap you in a second, but I want to give a quick like job hack to somebody who doesn't necessarily want to start their own project, but wants to go like get in and be a part of this, and like you're feeling FOMO. Okay, if you have a skill, right now is the time to do this. Go to projects that you love and go make an offer to join them. Find their career section, or hit people up on Twitter, or find them on LinkedIn, and don't just straight up connect with people on LinkedIn. Click personalized connect and put in a little message to get their attention and add some value. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to offer to work for them on a performance only basis. Tie yourself somehow to generating revenue for people, or to helping them get to their goals, and tying your compensation to that, so that they don't have to take a risk paying you in the bear market when their funds are lower. Go add value, go perform, go crush it, go watch 1,000 YouTube videos to learn whatever skill, whatever that may be, and then go perform, get some cash flow from your commissions, and then negotiate a performance-based stock option or token option or equity option in those businesses. And again, tie it to your overall performance. So if you're a salesperson, say after a certain percentage of sales, I want to vest X amount in tokens or X percentage of the company or whatever it is, and go get your piece of the pie, people. This is the time to do it, because everybody needs talent. And the best way to do that for somebody, like I've been on the hiring side and I've been on the getting hired side. The best thing is when it's performance and metrics are hit and payments revolve around metrics. That was something that I really hope you guys take to heart and like go figure out how to do that, because it's not that hard. A second thing, one pushback, Elliot, I do think there is another use case to crypto. One is like a really good one. It's very specific, but I absolutely love this one. It's one of my favorites of all time, and I feel like everybody's sleeping on it. Using money markets like an Aave or something, you can set up a self-repaying loan. For example, you find something like staked ETH in the form of a Lido or a Rocket ETH or a Coinbase ETH. I would suggest Coinbase because it's, you know, publicly traded company, so you can go look at their 10Qs and 10Ks and go check out all the stuff to make sure they're solvent. And then you can then supply that and borrow ETH against it, and you'll be earning and staking more than you're paying and borrowing. And so that delta will grow over time. The amount that is in supply of your like equity, if you will grow faster than your debt will grow. So they'll have that delta, and that's a self-repaying loan. Use that to pay your taxes, people. Okay. All that I'm going to say, I'm going to drop that little nugget. If you dig into why that's a really good idea, I bet you'll find some good stuff. Anyways, Nick, didn't mean to cut you off, but I just had to throw those two things in. Please go ahead.
Oh, no sweat. And I mean, you know, just to throw, you know, what weight I have behind your earlier statement about putting yourself out there. That's how I'm on this podcast right now. Was we were in an AMA. Felix had just moved over from leading the AMA team to the dev team. And I was doing some quick math in my head, and I'm like, I don't think they really have anybody on the AMA team right now. So, you know, DM Firestorm, put myself out there, had a lot of public speaking experience in both my sales job as well as being an aspiring stand-up comic during COVID. So I was like, okay, that sort of crushes your stage fright pretty quick if you go up there and try and like be funny to a bunch of comics who have heard your material last night. You get humbled real quick. But, you know, especially in our space and in the way I think it's really like the Wild West is just by being in the space and putting yourself out there. I think there's a lot of opportunities that you could get, which would be in more of an uphill battle in the Web2 space. And I don't think that's always going to be the case. That's sort of like pioneer's advantage, let's call it. A couple of things that I'd been thinking, Elio, when you were speaking. First, you know, sort of the emotional portion of it, and where those emotions are starting to come back. Because I think this Bitcoin ETF, whatever this run that we're witnessing, it's going to be, time will tell whether that is the first inning of the bull run or a little fake out before, you know, we get the bull run later on. But being able to see what moved, what narratives were being driven by this pump, you know, was extremely validating. You know, you described your Pinocchio moment. You know, if I had a moment like that and it wasn't out in the public eye, it was going through 2021, getting into the gaming run, then getting my head ripped off because I was a moon boy and thought it was never going to stop. You know, I was literally in my head and investing God, and I was walking around my office beating my chest like a gorilla. And then, you know, being completely humbled, being like, oh my God, all this stuff, you know, it can fall 99% and then it can fall 99% again. Being able to, you know, go into this a second time and try and, as much as you can, put those emotions aside. But I'll tell you, I think historical memory is considerably better than emotional memory, because it wasn't until I was sitting at the theater watching Dumb Money and watching the pump and the music in the background and everybody going nuts that I got that feeling again. Because I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. You can say beating your chest around the gorilla, but it's like an adrenaline dump that really you don't get in a lot of places. So, you know, super exciting, super feeling, you know, validated around that. You know, we watched AI narrative go, we watched gaming go, and then obviously sound money go, and like liquid ETH staking. So, you know, in a way, we got to get a preview of what I think a bull market looks like, if whether we're in one or not.
I love it. Well,
love
guys,
it.
I know we barely got through two of our topics, but this has been a lot of fun. We'll move them over to next week. Really appreciate you guys carving out some time for this. And for everybody watching and listening, I want to thank you all very, very much. Without y'all, we're just kind of talking at a computer. So thanks for tuning in with us today. If you guys love this, let us know. Maybe drop some questions if you want us to tackle some specific topics. We'd love to get you some answers on those. But have a wonderful, wonderful day. Have an even better weekend, and we will see you next week, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.